Today we have with us a highly distinguished personality. He is widely respected as an intellectual, a thought leader, and an administrator. He wears multiple hats. He is president for Indian Council for Cultural Relations. He is vice chairman for Rambhao Malgi Prabodhini and is also head of Public Policy Research Center. He works very closely with Ministry of Human Resource Development on new education policy as a member of Parliamentary Committee on Education. He is Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe. Vinay ji, welcome to the discussion.
Namaskar.
So, sir, recently Rambhao Malgi Prabodhini launched a very interesting platform, iCare, to help people in distress, to help people who really require help during this COVID crisis. So, sir, would you like to elaborate on this platform so that our youngsters who are listening to this conversation can join and support this platform, sir?
Yeah, surely. In fact, gladly, I must say, because this is a very innovative idea. And it struck to us right at the initial stage of the corona crisis, because especially in Delhi and many more cities, when the migrant laborers were kind of on the streets, walking to their places, desirous of moving maybe 100, 200, 400 kilometers. And there was quite a brouhaha about it. And therefore, they required some help in the form of some food items, maybe some shelter, and some other things as well. And there were many other people who were wanting to help them out. But those who were kind of help givers, or those who were desirous of extending some help, were clueless as to how do they approach these people, those who are the disadvantaged or marginalized or deprived sections of the society. On the other hand, the help seekers were also kind of unaware as to where can exactly the help come to us, apart from the government, of course. And therefore, this idea came to our mind that why cannot we create a platform where help givers and help seekers could be, in a way, could be brought together, and there could be an element of a group of volunteers also, because as it happens, poor people, those who are in slums or those who are on the streets, they may not be having access to internet, they may not know this technology, they may not visit this particular website. So an element of volunteers who were kind of facilitators, that was also conceived. And now, over the last maybe 12, 15 days after the launch of this particular platform, we are receiving a very, very encouraging response, and many people, not only in India, but abroad also, are rushing to the help of the deprived sections, sending money or giving suggestions. And there are counselors also, because in these difficult times, there are many people who are finding it very difficult to cope up with this isolation, kind of, with the loneliness amidst which they find themselves. So there are some psychiatrists, some counselors who are coming forward to give some counseling as well. So there are multiple ways in which this platform is being utilized. The other day, Union Minister from Orissa, he also came out in support of this kind of a platform. Many more people, they are attracted. The Niti Aayog has taken note of it. I'm sure this has a very bright future, and not just during this crisis, but even thereafter.
So, sir, I certainly hope that large number of youngsters will come forward and support the iCare platform. But as president of ICCR, Indian Council for Cultural Relationships, you are recently talking a lot about India's ability to influence global scenario through its soft power. So what do you mean according to this? What is soft power for you?
See, the concept of soft power came into discussion only in the 90s, after the renowned management expert and governance expert, rather, who was the director of the Kennedy School of Government, Dr. Joseph Nye, wrote a book on soft power, and it was he who first of all used the term soft power. Now, what is soft power? As a student of international relations, if I look at it, I understand that post Second World War, perhaps every other nation realized the limitations of military power, military might. And therefore, the way to influence the world was basically about the way you think, your intellectual and your perhaps emotional kind of transactions. And therefore, the concept of soft power is about not occupying the geographical area as such, but occupying the mind spaces, influencing your thought process. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. Many of us have visited Beijing, or for that matter, many of us must have visited Tel Aviv also. Now, when I first visited Beijing, what I realized was perhaps I was in a Mandarin America. It was all America around. The Americanization of the Chinese urban life was pretty evident over there. Same in Tel Aviv, I thought perhaps I am visiting a Hebrew America, because apart from the different language that was in use on billboards and stores, I mean shops and their boards and nameplates and everything. Otherwise, it was all America. So Americanization has knocked the doors of practically every other country, and especially the metro cities. That is what we have been seeing. But here in India, you don't get that experience. In Delhi, you don't feel that you are in a Hindi America kind of. That is not the case, because India has that Indianness intact. Whatever the reason, and one may assess it in a different way. That's a different story. So America has been influencing the way we live, not only within America, but elsewhere also, because that is the importance of soft power that they have realized. Now, when we look about, when we take a look at how India is faring on this soft power, I think we must remember that the very history of India starts with soft power. In a way, a modern history, I'm saying, because the discovery of India started in search of the spices. And Indian spices are an ingredient of India's soft power. And for that, people wanted to know where exactly this India is. And they came over here, and the rest is history. Everybody knows about it. Now, the Indian idea of soft power, I would say, is about the very idea of India, the philosophy of India, the way India builds a narrative around, as I said, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam for that matter. And therefore, this has been a key feature of Indian soft power, which is Indian philosophy. Thereafter, of course, there are several other factors. For example, our epics, our mythology, our Puranas and Shastras, our traditional knowledge systems, then our art forms, including our classical dances, classical music. In the modern terms, even our Bollywood movies are an important ingredient of our soft power. But eventually, I would say, people are the most important soft power. The way Indians behave, the way Indians present themselves, the way Indians deal with global community, that ultimately perhaps underscores the strength of soft power. And on that count, I believe there is much to be done.
Sir, we all believe that India has handled this COVID-19 crisis in a much more matured way as compared to the Western world. And because of this, now world order is going to get changed. So we would like to know your views on how India's soft power is going to be extremely relevant in this changed world order, sir.
See, first of all, the Indian view of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which I believe is the credo, is the fundamental statement of our philosophical approach towards international relations, for that matter, and for centuries or ages together. And therefore, this is nothing new. Our approach has always been that of live and let live, and we all should be striving as what we have been saying. And therefore, I think the first thing is that when there is a humanitarian crisis staring before you, I think the first duty that every other nation has to perform is to extend all possible help to the global community, not just to within the boundaries of your country, but wherever it is required. And if you are in a position to do that, you have to kind of extend that help. And therefore, this word is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the guiding principle. And I'm sure even the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, is motivated by this particular thing, because, as they say in the diplomatic parlance, when there is a kind of dialogue between two heads of nations, it is called as an official track or track 1. When there is a people-to-people interaction, it is called as track 2. But I think this humanitarian aspect is perhaps zero-track diplomacy, because it is the fundament, it is the Gangotri of international relations. Because in a crisis which is very, very humanitarian kind of, if we sit pretty and if we think in a very skewed and narrow kind of mentality, then what kind of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam are we talking about? And therefore, Prime Minister Modi is a person who walks the talk. He lifted the ban that was there on the export of certain drugs, and the drugs were taken to the US and other countries as well. So I think this is the fundamental thing, and therefore I have said it in so many words in several of my articles and tweets and social media posts also, that perhaps in this particular crisis, when everybody is feeling lonesome, isolated, disheartened, unsure about the future, there is a uncertainty all around. So in this particular crisis, I think the message that we are all one family, nobody is alone, has its own importance. And this is the time where we should be working towards that objective.
Sir, how ICCR actually is ensuring that we increase our spread of this soft power?
As I said, perhaps India is uniquely positioned because India is, I am sure, the only country about which in every nook and corner of the globe, there is a huge amount of curiosity. Now, in the modern times, this curiosity has also replaced by a fair amount of goodwill about India and Indians. Nowhere on the earth you will find that Indians are hated. I had a chance of visiting Afghanistan some couple of decades back when there was a turmoil kind of situation in Afghanistan. And when we used to roam around in Kabul in our vehicles and every security paraphernalia around us, many people used to mistake us as Pakistan. And therefore, they used to stop us, they used to inquire about us, they used to see our cards and everything. But when they get to know that we are Indians, they used to smile. They used to welcome us. Many used to shake hands with us. So India is welcomed everywhere, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Vietnam, whether it is Russia, China, wherever you go, even in Latin America for that matter. And therefore, Indians and India enjoy a huge amount of goodwill. There is a groundswell of goodwill about India. Now, the task of those who are working in the area of soft power is to convert this goodwill into a understanding about the idea of India. Unless India is understood properly, to many, India is an enigma. They can't understand because of the diversity that we have. They cannot match the thing. They simply cannot understand how people live like this, such a huge population and poverty and several other challenges, and still, kya baat hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari. So that is kind of a enigma. And therefore, we have to, through our efforts, academic efforts, other efforts, have to ensure that people try and understand what India is about. The moment the global community develops a deeper understanding about India, Indian civilization, Indian culture, and as I said, the idea of India, I think India's soft power will increase manyfold. There is absolutely no comparison insofar as our potential of soft power is concerned, and for that matter, of that any other country.
So, sir, but still, Western world is looking at India from their own lenses. For example, if you look at Aryan invasion theory or the way they put India is shown as a country of slumdog millionaires and so on and so forth. So, sir, what efforts we are taking to ensure that our point of view is actually gets propagated and is understood by the Western world in big ways, sir?
No, therefore, there are 2-3 challenges wherein this misunderstanding and the resultant misperception is something that has become a big challenge. For example, our social systems, our caste and caste discrimination that is prevalent even now today. So we have to tell people that while caste and other issues are there and we are trying to overcome them, but there is a very acclaimed philosophy which emanates from our constitution, and not just constitution, from our age-old worldview also, which is about social justice. That we have to tell the people that our original thinking doesn't approve of any caste discrimination. Similarly, gender, on gender issue also, we have been kind of portrayed in a very negative light. Now we have to tell them about our history of Gargi, Maitreyi, and all those heroes in our history, women heroes, I would say. And therefore, all these things we have to showcase properly so that the outlook of the Western world and Western or Eurocentric, whatever the influence in the academia, and as a result of that, the kind of misperception about India is done away with. We have to go extra mile. It cannot be done simply by sending maybe some hundreds and thousands of software technicians to US or Europe. They cannot bring this perceptual change, and therefore we will have to work over time in the academia, in the opinion making classes, and tell them what exactly it is. And eventually, I think the sectors like, for example, tourism will also play a big role, because India, after all, is an experience. You cannot understand India without experiencing India. And this experience, we have to ensure that the global population, global community is exposed to the idea of India through at the experiential level. This experiential learning matters, I think, it has its own significance. It matters most. And therefore, on that count also, there are many examples I can cite. For example, I had met with a German student when I was in Berlin some couple of decades back. We were traveling in a train, and he told me about India and his experience of India. And he said, I was really fed up with the kind of rule breakers that are there. Every time they don't observe the discipline on the streets, and then there is filth everywhere. People are very disorganized, and so on and so forth. Everything negative. But then he told me that even with this negativity, while I had planned my tour, which was originally for 10 days, I decided to stay in your beautiful country, and these are his words, for about 30 days, 1 month. Then I asked him, what prompted you to extend your stay in India? He said, sir, in the eyes of people in India, there is a glitter. Whereas if you look at our people in Europe, their eyes are completely without any glitter. There is nothing, there is no hope, there is no aspiration in their eyes. I don't know whether this is true or not, but this comment, I believe, is important. I'll give you one more example, because examples will make my point clearer. We have a friend who is a teacher in an American school. And when he's an Indian teacher, and in one of his classes a few years back, he came across a 15-year-old student who used to doze in his classroom. Always he used to doze. So this teacher, Indian teacher, was a bit upset, and he tried to wake him up, go to him to his bench and try to put his hand on his shoulders and wake him up. 3-4 times he woke up and tried to attend to the class, but it repeatedly happened. So one day the boy told him, the teacher, that, sir, teaching is your job. Whether to listen to it or not is my liberty. And therefore you cannot disturb me. If I want to listen to your speech, your lecture, I will attend it. Otherwise, allow me to sleep. Don't disturb me. Now, in a society like US, where individualism is all around, naturally our teacher was kind of speechless. But he didn't leave it at that. He again tried to develop a dialogue with him. And in one of his conversations, the boy told him, sir, that in my family there is a crisis. My mother has now entered into a new alliance, a new marriage. And now the new father that is there in my home doesn't want me to be staying there. So I am finding some hostel accommodation or something. And for that, I need to earn. And for that, I have to work as a dishwasher in a McDonald's outlet. And I have to stay, keep working up to 3 o'clock in the morning, which is why when I come back home at 4 a.m. and then I attend the classes, but I really cannot sustain, and therefore I sleep, I doze it out. But then the last statement come from the kid. He said, "Sir, since you are from India, you are wanting to know about the reason why I am dozing. No American teacher will even venture into that because of our ideas of privacy and whatnot." So this is India, because India really wants to connect the genuineness that goes with our emotionality, even the emotional quotient, as what management people talk about these days. I think our emotional quotient is very strong, and which is why क्या बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं है.
So you rightly said, sir, that we need to spread this positivity or this uniqueness of our culture. And for that, we really need to expose youngsters in Western world to our culture. For that, we need to have programs like Study in India, where we attract large number of students from Western world to come and study back in India. Understand our culture, understand our languages. But we don't see that happening in a really big way. Sir, can you tell me where is the problem, sir?
No, basically India has to present itself as a hub of higher education, and in a very systematic and professional manner, I would say. For example, if you look at the global statistics, India is the 26th destination country and the third source country. So that is the level of backlog. And therefore, if we have to do that, we have to focus on maybe 15, 20 universities, high-end technology institutions like IITs, even the management institutions for that matter, some private institutions also, private, public, everybody will have to be brought together. And it has to become a kind of concerted effort. If all departments try to make it happen, then only it can happen. Today, there are many other departments also that are involved into this. For example, Ayurveda, take that example. Now, how are we going to present our traditional knowledge in medicine, which is what is Ayurveda about? And unfortunately, there is a huge amount of inferiority complex also. Many people in the sector of healthcare keep referring to allopathy as modern medicine. This is a very judgmental kind of title. When you call allopathy modern medicine, you accept that Ayurveda is not modern, which is not the case. There are, a good amount of research projects happening in Ayurveda also, and Ayurveda is also equally modern. Why should we say that that is modern and we are not modern? So from there it starts, and therefore our mindset requires to be changed. There has to be a more strategic approach. We have to have a time-bound kind of a plan to execute, by way of which we can attract people. And even if that may take a little longer, because it is not so very easy, we at the ICCR have now evolved an idea of a Understanding India program, which is going to be a month-long program for which people can join. And there would be a Visit India aspect of it, under which they can come over here, stay over here for 8 days or so, and stay in families as well. Because if you have to understand a society, you have to understand the family system that is a part of the inherent part of that society. And therefore, we are trying to do it in our own way. But unfortunately, many times people look at the entire issue very superficially, and they consider it is only the Bharatanatyam and the classical music that are the ingredients of folklore. No, simply by making a dance performance which people may not find intelligible to them, you are not taking the soft power effort anywhere. You have to explain them what exactly, because all our art forms are basically connotations of a philosophy, of a worldview, of our approach towards human life. Everything, whether you take Bharatanatyam or Kuchipudi or Odishi, every other dance form, through the gestures, we are trying to establish, or rather, we are trying to elaborate our view about the relationship between an individual, a human being, and the Almighty, the supreme element in the universe. So that is something very fundamental. And if you fail in connoting that, if you fail in explaining it in different way to the people, I think the whole performance will come to a naught.
So, sir, I think we will close down on this very optimistic note. I hope that your view of soft power will certainly help India in moving forward and influencing the global community. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks for joining our discussion. Thank you very much, sir.
Pleasure, Dr. Jere. Dhanyavad.